Tom, if dealing in Syria with ISIS requires getting Assad out of the way, it seems to me this tension with Assad, the U.S. wants him gone, the Russians don't. Isn't that a hurdle over which we need that needs to be cleared to get some real progress?
Well, it's a hurdle, but I don't think that should stand in the way of the military and other operations, frankly, that we can launch working in a more intensive way. I don't know if it's to acknowledge failure, but it's a new phase. I do think there's a new and more dangerous phase here that requires new and additional steps. So I would not have the effort to take down ISIS, right, and to take Raqqa and to support directly the Kurdish and Arab forces in Syria. I would not have that be held up in any way by the political process, which has to go on in parallel, but it shouldn't be an obstacle to our pursuit. Now, in the Russians have an interest here in defeating ISIS. They have hundreds, if not thousands, of Russians who have come into this fight from the Caucasus and from Russia. They had 224 Russian citizens killed in this airline attack coming out of Sharm el-Sheikh, and we believe by ISIS in the Sinai. To date, they haven't put their focused effort on this, and that should be a test for them here, right, as to whether they can get themselves to act here in coordination with the rest of the international community against ISIS.
Fran, I want to ask about your Homeland Security expertise. Big conversation this week about Syrian refugees. What's your take on how much of a threat that is, how the administration's handled the debate?
You know, really interesting to me, John, the president has made an impassioned humanitarian argument, but if he really cares, and I believe he does really care about the refugees, he's not made the most persuasive, which is the national security argument. To not bring the refugees in, right? You leave these people in desperate circumstances and you cede the battlefield that are the refugee camps to the recruitment of ISIS, Al-Qaeda over the long term, and you leave those potential new recruits to our children and grandchildren to fight generations later. The second thing is we've had real trouble getting good human intelligence off the ground in Syria. These people are fleeing ISIS and they represent a real opportunity at gathering human intelligence as you take them in. The other thing is I don't understand the Republicans' point of view. After all, the Republicans have allowed themselves to be painted as anti-refugee, when I think what they're trying to articulate and say is we're anti-ISIS, we're anti-Al-Qaeda, and they're using the refugees to insert themselves. What we want to do is focus on that. Both sides seem to be sort of almost intentionally talking past each other, and there really is a rational middle ground.
Mike, I want to ask you about this notion of rules of engagement. Do you get the sense that things have changed in terms of the pace or the way in which the U.S. is taking the fight to ISIL? In my reporting, there's a lot of people who've said there's a real concern about collateral damage, and that has blocked some of the activities. Has that changed, do you think?
I don't believe it's changed. You know, there's very strict rules of engagement with regard to human collateral and environmental damage from attacking oil wells, for example. I think that's something we need to look at. The law of war allows for collateral damage as long as it's proportional to the military gain. We've had very strict standards for some really important purposes, but I think we need to look at that.
I think you'll see an intensification on that, and I think a number of new efforts will be taken in order to pressure ISIS. I want to go to Fran's point on the refugees, so it's an important point. The most difficult way to get into the United States is to declare yourself a refugee and go through the screening process, right? It's not a large number with respect to the Syrians, and it takes 18 to 24 months. But we do have real Homeland Security issues with respect to Europe, I think. Fran, you'd agree. In that Europe has real flaws in its external border control, in its intelligence sharing, in its airline passenger lists, and we need to insist that the Europeans clean this up. And the way to do that, I think, is through pressure through our visa waiver program, which is to say, clean it up or don't participate.
Great. Last word to you, Tom. Thanks all of you very much for being with us.